Hello and thank you for tuning in. You're watching The Property Guide on ET Now. This is your one-stop guide for all property investments in the country. Now we're so close to the union budget announcement. The next week we'll hear our brand new government present their first budget. Now remember, if you have questions about what you might hear on budget day, write to us. Our email ID is at the bottom of your screen. You can reach us on Twitter and you can reach us on Facebook. What we're going to do this week is we're going to take you through what you can expect as a citizen and as a home buyer. And to answer all of our questions, joining us in the studio, Lalit Kumar Jain, Chairman and Managing Director at Kumar Urban Development. He's also the Chairman of CRIDAI. Ravi Ahuja is the Executive Director at Cushman & Wakefield, and Rajiv Bhairathi is the Executive Director North and Capital Transactions at Knight Frank India. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Lalit, I'm going to start with you. As a citizen and a home buyer myself, my expectations are pretty high from this budget because of the entire campaign that got this government election. They talked about the fact that there'll be homes for every one of us, that things will become more affordable, that homes will be within reach, that we can all be able to afford the dream home that we've been eyeing for so long. I have two questions for you. Is the budget the space in which the government will take steps towards this direction? And should we actually hope to hear something from this budget?
See, the most important aspect currently, if those people who are vying to buy a home, is home loan rate. With inflation so high, RBI is not going to buzz. But I still feel that we cannot wait for inflation to come down. Therefore, I feel tax-free housing bonds have to be floated at 5% and with 2–2.5% arbitrage. Home loans can be made available at 7.5%. Now, this is for those who are having at least some ability to buy home. Now, this government has said by 2022, they will provide home to all. Now, it's a huge target because you are talking of literally $3 trillion investment every year. And more than that, you are talking of huge policy regime which has to change amongst all the states. Because
when you do something like that, land permissions are all state subjects, right?
So therefore, I think this government, of course, and the way we perceive this government, so there is an ability to move, and we expect that this government will come out with a separate special policy on affordable housing. However, this budget must address few issues which are inevitable.
Single window clearances, again, is that something that the government will use the budget as a platform to announce? Because this does seem like a government that likes to announce things outside of Parliament. Do you think that we'll be able to hear something on that in the budget?
I think single window clearance has been a very long-standing demand of the industry. But having said that, to my mind, the budget may not be the right platform, because single window clearance, when it comes to real estate, bear in mind, real estate is a state subject, and therefore when you talk about single window clearance, much of the approvals or clearances are linked to the state governance and state governments. The central government can only be so-called catalyst and recommend steps to the state government. So in my mind, the budget probably may give some direction, but it is really a non-budget item. The approval and the clearance time of 2 to 3 years, which is today eating up a lot of cost overruns in the projects, can really be brought down. And on the other hand, I think if you do well on the demand side, I think the stagnant sales can take a fillip. Single window clearance or SAPREP, whatever you may call it, to my mind, the central government must play a catalyst role, must provide some framework like they're doing in some of the other policies, and leave to the state governments within a time frame, because these things have been inordinately delayed over a period of time. Within a time frame, they need to be put in place.
Well, Rajiv, I want to bring you in here. Now, we hear from customers a lot, and unfortunately, the most number of complaints that we receive about delays, about non-delivery, about, final apartments not meeting specification is unfortunately from the NCR region. Now, do you believe that apart from everything else we just talked about, the need of the hour really is for a real estate regulator?
It may not be true that North India is the only place or the only region from where the complaints have been coming. I think the complaints have been coming thick and fast from all the regions. Maybe the North Indian customer is more active in terms of registering the complaint. But when you are talking about a real estate regulatory bill, there are two aspects. One is the business transactions between a developer and the customer. So the regulatory bill is talking about protecting the interests of the customers. But what about protecting the interests of the developer? Because don't forget that a developer would be able to deliver the product on time with the right specs only when he gets the approvals, etc., from the bureaucracy on time. So developer is like somebody in between the bureaucracy and the customer. So while the real estate regulatory bill is talking about protecting the customer, it's not talking about how to protect the developer or how to create that fast track mechanism for the speedy approvals so that the product could be delivered on time.
All right, Lalith, I want to bring you in here. And this is a view that's across the government right now, that the real estate industry is the big bad wolf and the customer is a little lamb that's going to take it for a ride. And among customers as well, we hear on Twitter where people say, oh, it's overpriced and they're charging us ridiculous amounts of money for matchbox-sized homes. It's just unfair. Tell us the other side of the story from a developer's point of view.
First, government doesn't interact with us as much as they interact with other industries. Whereas real estate is the barometer of growth in any country. Housing is the basic barometer. If you see, American Economic Report talks about what is the housing sale. Now, having said that, 3 years to get environment clearance. If this regulatory bill comes, mostly it will be another window of corruption. Because it doesn't address, like Rajiv rightly said, if a regulator regulates industry, it should be comprehensive. It should regulate the approving authority, the banking system, all stakeholders. But this proposed regulatory bill talks of licensing, revocation of license, penalizing, putting in jail. So at every point of time you serve a notice, there is money.
There's stick, there's no carrot.
So I think if regulator gets into this corruption mode, neither customer gets any benefit nor developer. On the contrary, cost goes up.
What is your view of the Maharashtra regulation bill for real estate?
According to me, any licensing policy, Maharashtra also doesn't provide any teeth on approval processes. So according to me, without that teeth, it's useless, because like construction is work in progress till possession, approval system is also work in progress. And if they don't go hand in hand, delays are bound to occur. Then there are shortage of sand, there is shortage of cement. Now, since last week, the cement prices have gone up by 25%, so cost overrun. Banks do not fund when there is a slump in the market. So all these things have to be controlled. And let me tell you, developer is such a person who has to be pitied now. And I use word that it has become achut, so they are backward class, they have to be protected now.
That might be a very different view on developers than we've had on the show in the past. But when we come back, we'll talk about real estate mutual funds. Is it possible, or might it be possible in the near future, for you and I to invest 1,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees in real estate as opposed to 1 crore rupees, which is the ticket size right now? We'll talk about that on the other side of this break. Right, welcome back. You're watching The Property Guide in ET Now. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, the 10th of July is the union budget announcement from our brand new government in the centre. Remember, we'll be right here on that day, and you can send in any question you have when you hear that budget announcement about buying a home. We're talking about what we could expect from the budget and what the real estate industry needs most in order to make homes available to you and me. Ravi, I want to bring you in here. We've been hearing about this in all of the reports right now. Fiscal deficit is in really bad shape. The finance minister really has inherited a boat with holes in it. He might have bigger fish to fry in this budget than housing. What in the housing sector do you think is going to make it to his list at all? Because he has so much to worry about.
Yeah, I know you're right. So he's got a big task ahead, and I think he has to take it step by step. When you talk about housing and issues related to housing, they become a little micro. And as I said, it's a state subject. I think something linked which can provide a fillip to real estate as a byproduct is the entire sector of infrastructure. And if the finance minister augurs well with certain policy decisions on the growth of infrastructure, I think we will see a revival in certain sectors. Growth of infrastructure will clearly lead the growth for sectors such as cement, steel, power for sure, but also social infrastructure and creation of that infrastructure. For example, the government has announced in its manifesto, a decision that they may want to initiate 100 new smart cities. Now that would mean that there's a huge amount of money which will be spent on social infrastructure and civic infrastructure to create these new destinations or new locations. They will not be in the periphery of the city because, as I understand, they are new, and therefore one will have to do feasibility studies as to where they can come up. And therefore, once you start initiating this process, the kind of investment will yield a lot of fillip to the industry.
It comes back to this with a government that has barely a month to put this together. Even the nomenclature is confusing at this point. Are we talking priority? Are we talking infrastructure? Are we talking low cost? Are we talking affordable housing? It's very likely that they might just brush it aside and say this is a problem we'll handle later.
According to me, for economy it's important.
Okay.
So not for housing sector as such.
Right.
For economy it's important that they move housing. Now on smart cities, see, according to me, talking of new cities will require huge paraphernalia, the land acquisition and planning, feasibilities, water resource, employment, etc. So according to me, the current cities which are like magnets, which are inviting a lot of migration, they have to be developed in their peripheries, like a satellite or peripheral cities with concept of smart cities, and they will have to get in entire role model kind of development for one city so that it can be replicated. It can happen, but it's a long shot.
It's a long shot. All right, Rajiv, I want to bring you in here now. One problem is finishing a project. The other one is bringing in the money. How likely is it that we might see REITs or we might see other such moves happen in this budget to bring in the much needed cash into this industry?
So let me talk about the REIT, because I believe that REIT could be the single biggest game changer for the real estate industry besides the affordable housing about which Mr. Jain spoke elaborately. At Knight Frank, we think that there's almost about 100 million square feet of grade A property between 8 to 10 top developers of the country, amounting to almost about $8 to $10 billion of investment opportunity waiting to be unlocked. I think a REIT is going to help the economy, the developers, the retail investors, and the government at large, because don't forget that almost about $25 to $30 billion of private equity has come into the country since 2005, and a lot of it has gotten stuck into the commercial assets. So unless you create an exit mechanism for this private equity, a lot of it is foreign private equity, you won't see the fresh wave of private equity coming in. And REIT can be that mechanism which could help. So the current status is that SEBI had issued a white paper almost a year back, but that white paper was completely silent about the taxation issues. We expect the budget to lay down the roadblock on the taxation aspects. And there are quite a few issues related to the taxation. So the first issue is about how do you handle the capital gains tax when the SPV who is owning the leased out asset transfers that asset to the REIT? How do you handle the stamps duty? How do you handle the income generated from those properties? How do you handle the dividend distribution tax in the hands of the investor? So I think a lot of exemption would be required, and it would be a very small price for the government, given the overall context in which it's going to help the industry.
All right, so for those of our viewers who are not familiar with REITs, it basically means real estate investment trust. So it will be a mutual fund where you and I can put a little bit of money. The money gets invested in a building or a construction, and we share the profits. It basically brings down the ticket size that you have to invest in order to take advantage of the real estate industry, and it brings in money for the industry itself. Ravi, is that the only solution available to us right now? How likely is it that we might see it happen in the budget?
Yeah, so when we talk about solutions, let's not link it to the budget. While there is clearly a demand, or there's clearly a request that we need to understand the timelines when this government will introduce REITs. Having said that, let's understand REITs a little more deeper. When you talk about REITs in the more developed world, we look at pre-leased assets, creating an income stream, which is then distributed as dividend, just like mutual funds. When they earn in the stock market, they distribute. Now, given the Indian commercial real estate yields of income generating assets, we're looking at between 8.5–9% on the lower end to 11 to 12% on the higher end. Now, when you look at this income getting taxed further, the investor in India earns much less than 9% on an average. That means, is he better off just putting his money in an FD and earning the same amount, which after 12 months, incidentally, in certain cases is tax-free again? And therefore, the developed nations where the yields are much lower in terms of expectations, in the FD or in the fixed deposit scenario where investors earn just 3–4%, and somewhere lower in economies like Japan, Europe and US, this can be a major issue. And therefore, what is the incentive the government provides for these investors to put in their small savings in a product like REIT and then exit? Yeah.
All right, so we're currently in an industry where there's frustration on all ends between the customers, between the developers, and hopes are high really from this government, from the budget, or if not. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about urban development, trains, roads, basically transportation that will connect us to the city centres and give us more room to occupy. Welcome back. You're watching the Property Guide on ET Now. Thank you for staying with us. Now, all three of our guests are still with us. We're talking about the upcoming budget announcement and what impact it will have on you and me as home buyers. I want to quickly ask one question to all of my panelists, and that's about urban development, because it's one thing to ask for more homes, but if there's no connectivity to places like Panvel or New Panvel or Yelahanka in Bangalore, we need roads, we need trains, we need metros. How important should that be on the priority list of the government, Ravi?
No, I think that should be at the topmost. And we've discussed about growth in infrastructure, and be it road, be it mass transit systems, be it railways, these are all means and tools to make connectivity possible. And real estate development, thrives when there is connectivity. Having said that, we clearly discussed just a while ago with Lalitji on the benefits of densification, and I think he can elaborate more on that, because there's a study done and they've, as CREDAI, also looked into it. But having said that, it's very critical that when we talk about these satellite towns or when we talk about these smart cities, the densification creation in those locations is very critical for such mass transit or transportation mechanisms to create connectivity really realistic. And without that, I think it will be a blunder if we look at half occupied populated cities. Yeah.
Lalit, I want to ask you this. Now, across the country, wherever there's been a metro rail announcement, whether it's Bangalore, Mumbai, Hyderabad, it's driven up rates across that line. Do you believe that further extensions of metro lines, further extensions of monorails, things like that, ring roads, is the best way to go around bringing in more land into our cities?
More densification makes physical infrastructure viable, also saves green land from destruction. Also, people can work and walk to work or travel to work in short distances. So, if you talk of urbanization in future, we have to really reinvent our own thinking. We think FSI or increasing FSI is a taboo, it's political scandal. Whereas wherever in India they have increased FSI, the mass transit system has become viable, their drainage and water supply cost has come down, and entire infrastructure has become viable. Therefore, and the housing cost has come down. So Hyderabad, where FAR is not there, there is no limit. But last 10 years you don't see price hike in housing. Ahmedabad, they have recently hiked FAR and it was surprise to developers. So government didn't even consult developers. Prices have come down. Urbanization is the subject which has to be looked into carefully, and we have to undo the damages done.
Rajiv, I want to bring you in here. I mean, 100 new smart cities is all well and good, but do you think it's more important right now to cure whatever is ailing our old cities?
So I'm not sure whether the government is talking about 100 new smart cities or smarting the old cities that we have. Today the situation is that a lot of new cities like Gurgaon, I belong to North, so I can take the example of Gurgaon very safely. It's bursting at the periphery, and unless you have smarter ways of handling that growth, it's going to be a decay, an urban decay. So, and let's understand what is the definition of a smart city. A smart city is a city which would use information technology effectively to optimally utilize the scarce natural resources, be it water or the energy. So, while talking about 100 new smart cities is a good statement of intent, I think the challenge lies in smarting the cities that we already have, and mass rapid transportation system is one of the ways of doing it. Government should think about creating incentives for producing more solar energy. It should talk about how we can conserve the water resources that we have in the existing cities. I think that's more important than creating new cities. The example is example of a new smart city is GIFT, which is coming on the outskirts of Ahmedabad. These are multi-decadal projects, and in the short run, any announcement is not going to kickstart the economy. It's not going to create jobs. It's not going to create a humongous economic activity. However, projects in the existing city would perhaps benefit the economy more than creating new cities. So I think a more viable proposition in my mind would be using the information technology to efficiently optimize the resources that we have in the existing cities and help the existing cities grow by way of either creating more FSI or by increasing them at the periphery, by giving them adequate support of mass rapid transportation system as well as social infrastructure.
All right. So basically, we've learned that the election manifesto painted a very beautiful picture that's going to possibly take a very, very long time to actually materialize. In the meantime, we're going to hope for small things from this budget, at least for this year. And remember, if you have questions about anything you hear in that budget announcement, feel free to write to us and we'll answer your questions next weekend as soon as the announcement is done. Lali, thank you so much for coming in. Ravi and Rajiv, thank you so much for spending time with us this weekend and answering all of our questions. It was a pleasure to sit down with you. Thank you for watching. Stay with ET Now.